Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to a new series on my channel where I will be ranking the weekly manga chapters in Shonen Jump every single week. And so this week we're starting out and kind of how the show is going to go. This is the first, attempt at it. We're going to rank each chapter. I'm going to give you my least favorite to my favorite, and then we're going to go over what I thought the best cliffhanger, best panel, and a chapter I'm most excited for going into the future for next week. I thought this would be a good series to start as I really enjoy reading manga weekly and I want to start reading more series weekly. I'm only reading a handful right now. I felt that if I started this series and it kept me discussing these chapters every single week, that I would be more likely to start other new series that are going on weekly. I really want to support the Shonen Jump app, and so I think it's really good to use that app and to support a lot of the series that are on it, some of which are really, really good. And so this week will be the first week of the Shonen Jump weekly rankings. And to start out, there are a lot of series in Shonen Jump, and a handful of which I am not caught up to right now. Whether I watched the anime and have just been waiting to read the manga, or series that I'm just about to start, there are a lot of series that I have not read yet. And so, if you're watching this video and there's a series you want me to cover, you want me to read as soon as possible, put it down in the comments, and that will be high up on my list for catching up to series. I'm hoping over the next few months, as I'm doing this show more and more, that I will start catching up to more series. So then eventually the goal is I'm caught up to essentially everything in Shonen Jump, and so I'm able to just read through those every week, and we can get a really good view at what series are continually doing the best in the magazine and what series are lacking a little bit. So this week is pretty small. There's only 5 new chapters that have been released over the week that are series that I'm reading. One of those is One Piece. If you've been with the channel for any period of time, you know I'm a huge One Piece fan. I have my whole journey through One Piece recorded on this channel, so go check that out if you want more of my thoughts on One Piece. One Piece is one. Recently, I just caught up to Black Clover. That is another chapter we'll be covering this week. Choujin X, the new Sui Ishida manga. Tokyo Ghoul is one of my favorites ever. This manga is really early on in its run. New chapter this week. Then we have Blue Box, another new series that I've started reading this year. And lastly, we have the oddly named PPPPPP. What a crazy name for a series, but I'm really enjoying it so far. So those are the 5 series that we're ranking for this first week of the weekly Shonen Jump rankings. And starting out at number 5, I have Black Clover, chapter 3112. I have this chapter at the bottom, not necessarily because the content in this chapter was weak, but in comparison to the few chapters that we have gotten before it, it just didn't seem to live up to the hype. Here we focus on a lot of the more side characters in the series and not the particularly interesting ones. And so for me, this chapter took me a little bit to get into. I definitely think Black Clover is a series that is lifted up by its side characters, but that still doesn't mean that I'm as interested in all of them. And this is the batch of characters that I just really struggled to get into. The stakes of this fight are pretty good because we really care about Yami, but really the first half of this chapter just felt like a little bit of a letdown in comparison to the chapters that we've gotten previously, and that might not even be Tabata not delivering as much as how good the chapters were previously, but this is where the series is starting, so I have to put this Black Clover chapter at number 5. But the artwork here is particularly good, and the last page, the spread page, when Asta, Zora, and the entire crew shows up was one of the most hype moments from this week, and definitely is in contention for cliffhanger of the week, and I think really salvaged this chapter. It felt like you could have removed this chapter and it wouldn't have really made a difference in my overall feeling of the series, but I have a feeling that the next chapter is going to be even better. At number 4, we have Blue Box. Blue Box is a series that I have really become obsessed with over the last few months, and I fully expect to make a video on it on its own eventually. But talking about this chapter in specifically, one of the highlights from this Blue Box chapter was seeing Shinatsu's perspective. Most of the series up until this point, we have not really focused on her and gotten any viewpoints from her, and so in this chapter it was really nice to see that happen. But I do think the overall chapter was missing some of the magic that we've seen in many other chapters before this. Again, it's really hard to move the story forward in a meaningful way in only 15 to 20 pages. But still, here, I felt like there could have been more done to move forward their relationship. It's nice to get her perspective, but in the end, I thought the chapter was solid. The best part about this chapter was hearing her talk to Taiki's father. That is a relationship that we've definitely been needing, and it was really nice to hear his reasoning for why they allowed her to come stay at their house, and it really deepened their relationship, I think, in a way that I was never expecting would happen. And of course, the end of the chapter nails it like all Shonen Jump chapters do, where now they're going on a walk together, and I can't wait for next week to see what kind of intrigue happens with them on their walk. But overall, it feels like another chapter that just didn't quite move the story forward enough, but still had a lot of really good moments, especially with Takai's father. At number 3, we have PPPPPP. This music manga has actually been really good so far. It's been a lot of fun to see the kind of film-like things that are created from just characters playing the piano. The highlight of this chapter, no doubt, and one of the coolest moments I think for the entire week in Shonen Jump, is when our main character's brother starts to cry at seeing what he was able to do, and yet he's still able to crush him in the competition. The drama that's happening between our main character and his brothers is fantastic in the series, and it's making me really excited to see where this story will go from here, and in what ways our boy will evolve into an elite pianist. Probably one of my favorite moments from this week had to have been the discussion on talent versus hard work in this story. The idea that talent is something that you never can truly overcome, but through hard work you can become something different than those people who are the most talented, I think is a really interesting outlook on a topic that is discussed relentlessly in Shonen Jump, and I really enjoyed that from PPPPPP. And it's for these reasons that I have it at the 3rd best chapter this week. There are some characters here that aren't the most interesting, but overall, I think this series has a really bright future in Shonen Jump. And at number 2, we have Choujin X. This is a series that I was looking forward to so much from Ida, as one of my favorite series of all time is Tokyo Ghoul, but so far a lot of these chapters have been really hit or miss. I think the artwork here is stellar and the initial concept is really good, but a lot of the characters and world building has been pretty lacking so far. But this chapter was really good overall because of the crazy energy that it has through its fight sequences. This chapter was almost entirely a fight, and it worked better for that. It shows its world building through these fight sequences and how people react to it, which is far more organic than what it has done a little bit earlier in this series, and the artwork of Ida is really truly able to shine here. A lot of these sequences are really well done, and the paneling is some of the most unique in the entire magazine. And the only reason that I don't have this chapter number 1, as it was probably the most enjoyable to read just because the action was so good, is because of the ending, where that last couple of panels were just a bit confusing, and that's been a critique of Ida throughout a lot of his work, especially towards the end of Tokyo Ghoul, is that his art style is incredibly experimental and exciting, but sometimes it could be confusing, and that definitely took away from this chapter being number 1 this week, but still it was very exciting to see Ida take this step with this chapter. The action here is incredible and some of the best he's done in a while. And of course, number 1 is the king of shonen, One Piece. Last week's chapter was not the most well received, but here is a nice return to form for the series. The 2 highlights of this chapter was Big Mom and Sanji. Big Mom's fight with Kid and Law was awesome, and the panel of her taking away lives as she starts to grow bigger was really cool to see. I didn't think they could make this character more terrifying than she already has been, but here I am and Oda's still defying my expectations. And I really think Big Mom is one of the more underrated characters in One Piece, and here showed why. She is absolutely terrifying, but also exciting to watch on screen, and I can't wait to see more of her fight between Kid and Law. And then as well, Oda does a lot of really cool things with Sanji in this chapter. The conflict between his family and who he feels he is has been ramping up recently and comes to a head in this chapter when he chooses to kill his suit. I really enjoyed this decision, and honestly, I didn't think Oda was going to go this way. I thought the suit was going to be a big deal later on, and maybe it will be, but for now, Sanji reaffirms that he is the person that Luffy found all the way back at Baratier, and he's not part of Germa. Really exciting and a great character moment, maybe the best character moment we got this entire week out of Shonen Jump. But then you take it even a step further with him calling Zoro and telling Zoro to kill him at the end of this fight if he doesn't seem himself. Because Luffy brought on the Sanji that was at Baratier, and right now Sanji is at risk of not being the person that he was at the start of this journey. Really great stuff out of Oda, an amazing final panel with Sanji kicking ass, and overall this was one of the best chapters from One Piece out of the last handful, so it takes my #1 spot on my first week of the Weekly Shonen Jump rankings. Now that we have the rankings out of the way, obviously I think all of these chapters were really good, and sometimes we're splitting hairs in these rankings, especially with me only reading 5 series right now. Soon there will be more series and potentially chapters that come along that I actually don't enjoy, but this week I thought the quality of chapters were all very high. Now we have to give out awards for the best panel of the week, the best cliffhanger, and the chapter I'm most excited for next week. For the best panel of the week, it has to go to Oda and the panel of Big Mom standing over Kid and Law. Here it shows the terror of Big Mom beautifully and really highlights just how good of an artist Oda is and how otherworldly the emperors can be. For the best cliffhanger, I actually have to give it to Black Clover. The last panel and cliffhanger of Black Clover really saved the chapter from being something that was totally forgettable, as now the Black Bulls are finally back together. Really satisfying seeing Asta break through that when we've barely seen Asta in the last handful of chapters. So even though that chapter overall was a little weaker, that cliffhanger was one of the best. The series that I'm most excited to read next week has to be Blue Box. I cannot wait to see what kind of intrigue happens when these two go on a walk, and it's something so simple, and compared to these massive fights happening in Black Clover and One Piece, somehow just 2 people going for a walk to the store is what's got me the most excited and what makes Blue Box such a brilliant series. So this was my first episode of my weekly Shonen Jump rankings. I really wanted to start this series. I've been thinking about doing it for a while, and if I put it off for any longer, I knew I wouldn't be starting it. So here's to the first week of the weekly Shonen Jump rankings. You can see that I have a new setup right now that definitely needs a lot of work, but I actually just moved across the country, and so there's still a lot to be done to getting my setup back to where it was at previously, but don't worry, I will be working on the setup even more, especially as these rankings go. So let me know down below, what was your favorite chapter? What chapter are you most excited for next week? And definitely let me know what series you would like me to read so I can start getting those in the rankings. There's a handful that I'm working my way through right now, and hopefully in the coming weeks I will catch up to, but there is a lot of series and a lot of chapters to read. So a series like, say, Dr. Stone and Jujutsu Kaisen, both of which I've seen the anime of, I'm waiting a little bit to catch up to those as I catch up to some other smaller series that might not be talked about as much. But let me know what you think. I hope you guys enjoyed this first episode. I'm really excited to turn this into an actual show, but this is where it has to start, right? I have to start from somewhere. So I hope you enjoyed these rankings, and I hope to see you guys next week for the weekly Shonen Jump rankings.